Okay, ready?
Yeah.
All right. Hey everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Love is Medicine, where we create with fluidity when it arises and when inspiration strikes, because that's how Gina operates in this world. And I'm learning to embrace it, honor it, and love it instead of telling myself that I'm wrong for it. And that's an aspect of what we're talking about today, right now, is that we actually just recorded a 90-minute workshop, for lack of a better word, on shadow work, which I feel like is kind of a buzzword a little bit. So when I think about like what shadow work is, in my words, and then I'll ask Amber to put it in her words as well, um, is looking like illuminating the parts of myself that I keep hidden, that I'm ashamed of, embarrassed of, guilty, um, say they're like they're not worthy, or say they're bad, like labeling the parts of me that I just feel aren't like good. Especially, I'll say too, hmm, I want to say, there are certain expectations on a woman to be soft or gentle or like nurturing, or I even went in my own journey of feeling really unworthy because I don't have biological children, all the things. And we'll get into that in the conversation, but when it comes to shadow work, I think and again, I'll say my goal, and then Amber can share her goal for the session, and the listener maybe is that ad identifying what that fancy buzzword like even fucking means. Number one. Number two would be identifying your own shadow. And if you walk away from listening to this with like one simple way or thought or idea to integrate it into yourself, to love it and walk with it and hold its hand versus shaming it and shutting it and hiding it, then I feel like this is a good fucking hour of your time. So that's like and I just listen, I talk how I talk and it's not fancy. And sometimes I feel like even in like healing spaces, I feel like it's a little bit raw and unfiltered, but that's just who I am. Um, and I love that about me. And I think the identification, and I think we have an obligation of like simplifying some things in the spiritual space too. Truthfully, that was like my only goal around even creating a podcast, is like, can we simplify this shit and stop trying to be so fancy? So anyway, I'm gonna pause there because I want to hear from Amber. I want to hear her thoughts, even, your experience in shadow work personally. Obviously, Amber brings human design to the t experience and knowledge to the table, but so much more. Like, this podcast isn't designed to be one thing. It's designed to be a culmination of experience, skills, and assets from all of us. So anyway, I'm gonna stop talking for a minute and let Amber just speak to shadow work a little bit from her own personal definition.
Thank you. Yeah, so I mean, I think shadow and shadow work, those are some buzzwords for sure. And I think that depending on what kind of lens you're looking at it through, it can actually be called lots of different things. Like if you're looking at it from a psychological point of view, brain function, spirituality, our mental processes, even that aspect of like the body. So for me, shadow. I love what you said. It's those pieces we tend to hide away from ourselves and from others. I believe that shadow is really for me as I continue to explore this are the pieces that I don't believe that society and the systems that we live in find acceptable on a mass scale. And so we lock them, those pieces of ourselves, we lock them away, we hide them because we believe, or we've been conditioned to believe, that there's some kind of expectation for us to be a certain way. I love that a moment ago you mentioned about it, looking at it from the idea, if you identify yourself as a female in our current um, environment, that there are certain expectations that our society and our programming and our systems have placed upon those people that identify themselves as female. And, so yeah, shadow is anything that we don't innately want to publicly show, and the pieces of ourselves that we carry shame and guilt about. And that's a lot, there's a lot there to work with. So.
No, I love that, and I love that we're having these conversations, and also, there'll be links in the podcast description to some of our resources when it comes to shadow work and the culmination of human design, somatic work, and shamanic and ritual work with Jocelyn. But I personally love, and I think that's why am drawn to like a podcast, is because I just appreciate the most like natural conversation about raw human experience. I don't always learn from and digest when I listen to like a or fancy, not fancy, when I listen to kind of like a traditional way of providing information. And while tools and resources are great to receive in the form of like workshops or retreats and stuff like that, I think that something beautiful that the podcasting world has done is share vulnerable human experience and storytelling. And so Amber and I both chose to use the words guilt, shame, and I think it's actually in my Amber could probably speak to where this is at in my human design. Guilt is like very prevalent in there. And for me, guilt and shame go hand in hand. I think like how I grew up and the environment in which I grew up, there was just a lot of shame around being like anything other than quiet, meek, servitude. Um, so anything like other than those things, just thought I was bad. So when you're a kid and you have these like natural inclinations to like, I don't know, explore the world, when you're taught to hide your body, be ashamed of your body, shame of sexuality, feeling all these things. And I don't really even know why all this is coming out of my mouth right now, but if it's coming out of my mouth, I mean it must be important. But I think about that correlating with how I hide ourselves and tie us up into like pretty little boxes in the world when we present for careers, jobs, in society, even in social circles. I think about how we hide the messy parts of ourselves because fear of being fully seen for those messy parts means that we might be abandoned, left, not liked, not loved. And if any of those are compromised, that means like, oh my God, like the world is ending and my life is over, blah, 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 blah. And that ties into like attachment stuff, which is a whole other podcast episode, but this is about shadow work, so let me not go off on a tangent. Um, but quickly too, I also want to acknowledge that yesterday we had a new moon in Virgo in the 29th degree, and we also experienced a solar eclipse in Virgo. And I have no idea when this podcast is going to even end up on like streaming shit. But regardless, my hope is that the listeners like utilize the energy of the eclipse to determine like things that were buried, to see them clearly and make a decision of, am I going to carry this forward or am I going to let it go? And I think that's like a huge piece of shadow work, not so much letting it go, but letting it come in and be like integrated. So I'll say that for me personally, I wrote on shadow last night, particularly around relationships in my life. Because karmic relationships is a huge motherfucking theme, right? For me right now, astrologically and just in my life. And I wrote about patterns of behavior in relationships that I no longer want to carry with me. Um, and so, part of that is like control. Fear. Here's just off the top of my head. I wrote about control, fear of the past repeating itself, and paranoia, because when I experience fear, my mind makes assumptions that people in my life are trying to hurt me,
Mm.
which is like wild to admit, man, because my mind will make shit up. And but when I say it out loud, when I name it, when I honor it, which is like shadow work, holding space for those things and not trying to bury it, is when I can really like actually like integrate it into my whole self. So, um, and Amber sun sign is in Virgo, so I would be curious to hear like what, even from a human design perspective or wherever you choose to go with it, like how can we use this energy right now?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to say the first thing that comes to mind is, I mean, I love that you mentioned that the new moon and this partial solar eclipse that happened in Virgo. And today, you and I are actually recording on the autumn equinox, which is all about balance.
Mm,
So not sitting too much in the light or sitting too much in the dark, but having this balance. And we're on this day, I have chills over my whole body right now, where we find a balance between those two parts of ourselves. And I think you know, I don't I think that shadow work, seeking these parts of ourselves, digging them up, giving them a name, like you just said, bringing them out into out into the public, for whatever that means to you. I don't mean like necessarily publicly talking about your shadow shit, but I do mean like, bringing it out of yourself so that you can recognize it and shake hands with it
mm,
and hug it and love it. I think it's really important right now because this is what provides us that sense of balance over the course of our life. And I also just want to mention here that I don't believe that, my own personal opinion is that balance is something that is on a moment by moment basis. So
mm,
I can be balanced right now, and a second from now, I can be unbalanced. I believe it is truly a dynamic thing to experience, and it is not static. And it's because we are constantly learning, moving, changing, making decisions, and we have free will. So that, all of that said, the energy right now, specifically the Virgoian energy that we're just coming out of, um, what is very much about taking care of our bodies, um, being the healthiest version of ourselves that we possibly can be, caretaking. Traditionally, the archetype of Virgo is a female maiden. There's a lot of mothering, earth tending energy to that archetype. And I think that that's what we're being asked to do, is to choose to mother ourselves with unconditional love in every aspect that we are. And it's so interesting that we're moving into Libra season, which is all about fairness and justice and again, for lack of a better word, balance. Because I believe that when we do, as you mentioned, integrate the shadow pieces of ourselves, we can really move away from trying to seek perfectionism, which is a shadow aspect of the Virgo archetype, and believe that we're not enough and we need to fix ourselves and all bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. And instead accept and find love and for all parts of ourselves and find as close as we can this balance.
mm,
And that is really, really beautiful. And the energy of that right now is beautiful. So, yeah, and regardless of when you're listening to this podcast, I think you can ask the universe to allow you to access those energies at any time, to take care of yourself and to try to find unconditional love and a balance within yourself for all aspects of who you are.
Mm. I love that. I love what you said about balance. I feel like it's like this elusive. I feel like balance is like this elusive state that is like ever not only changing but like comes and goes. And while you were talking, like I was just thinking about how we tend to paint a picture of this work as like heavy, scary, uh, triggering, like these words with connotation that actually, in my experience, like as I go further and further on my personal path and journey and spiritual th tools that I use, it's like that belief system and narrative that I played for years and years and years that like healing work is painful. Like I can honestly say that for the most part, like it's taken time and effort and energy, but I can honestly say that I've changed my language around that. Like I have changed my language from heaviness to like actually joy, presence, like these words that I correlate with my like healing journey. And I think too like that came with a lot of expectation of how like it should look or feel or how it should occur. Like and I don't even know if I've ever really talked about it on here or much, but I was when I started exploring my spirituality, arguably my whole life, but when I got really like, dedicated was probably 10 years ago, and I think about I was so strict, man. I was really strict and those were shadow aspect of myself of if I don't do this perfectly, then I will not achieve this outcome. And again, an expectation that I had on what this journey should look like for me, which ultimately sets us up for failure. Sets me up for failure every fucking time. When I place an unrealistic expectation on myself, a person, an outcome, a relationship, because I have this beautiful creative imagination that's so awesome. However, it also because of my and this comes to also ties into a defined ajna is that I have a very fixed notion of how I want some shit to go. It is fixed as a motherfucker.
Mhm.
And it gets me in some trouble, man. And ultimately causes harm to not only me, but the people I love, because I hold them to a standard or an expectation that guess what, Amber, they sometimes don't even know about.
Girl, you and me both.
Which is like, but here's what's cool is that we like the awareness. I don't, and I won't speak for you, but even for me, just in the past few weeks, that awareness, even though I might have known about it years ago, I feel like my awareness has shifted more to a place of I can see it in the moment and I can make a different choice. Like there's another path, Gina. Like you don't have to hang on to this fixed idea, of an outcome because it's not real anyway. It's actually just perceived fucking fantasy for real.
Yeah.
Anyway, and I know, and you've said similar things, so I guess I'm just curious about A, your experience, but B, how you, shift in a moment. Like, how do we?
Mm. Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I love that you said, about changing the language we use around shadow work because I do agree with you. There's this idea that it has to be very heavy.
Mm,
And you said this actually in the workshop that we just finished. There's like this density to it, like this weight. And one of the ways I changed that was really releasing any fucks about what other people thought about me. And I do have to say, I think some of that comes with age and
Mhm.
yet, and experience.
Mhm.
And yet, I do also want to give mad props to the younger generations because I do believe that as we continue to do this work, and I say that we, like those of us that have been around, our younger generations are much more likely to be like not give zero fucks.
Yes.
And so that, acknowledging that, what, this is a really shadowy part of myself or something that I would have been shamed for.
Mm.
And in that moment, you're so correct. Like harnessing the now moment, right now in this moment, I can see this about myself. And then just being like, you know what? Like thanking myself. I'm not trying to repair myself. I'm
Mm.
not trying to fix myself. I'm not even trying to deny that part of myself, but just accepting it, accepting myself in that moment, even if I believe that whatever, it's some shitty part of myself, because at the end of the day, it is still part of me. And I'm a lovable person. And like I actually, I could cry because this is taken talking about the softness that we're supposed to have. I have spent so many years just believing that I wasn't a good enough mom
Mm.
because I wasn't some super soft, cuddly, love, like whatever, schmoopy mom. And wife, even as because I am a wife and I have a husband, that I should be some other version, like of a more soft a wife that's maybe not as loud and doesn't speak as much, and blah, fill in all the stupid blanks that we create around that. And really just in the moment, just honoring that, what, this is who I am, and then not giving a shit what other people think about me, and loving myself in the moment and loving myself through it.
Mm.
That has been a epic game changer for me. Um, yeah, just epically changes the way I'm able to walk through the world each day.
Mm. Yeah, and I just like appreciate what you said about like essentially, giving ourselves a break, right? I think a lot about allowing myself to be human. 'Cause we both said perfectionism a few times, and when I live in that space, I actually rob myself of aspects of the human experience. Um, because here's the thing, and this also ties into our projectorness, or I'll speak for me. I know it ties into this is a desire to be seen
Mm.
and recognized. And this ties into my like 2-4 is I want to be seen, but I want to be hidden at the same time. And it's a wild dichotomy to grapple with. And I don't even want to use the word grapple. It's been an an opportunity to embrace seemingly contradictory feelings like in my whole self. So it's this little bit of this push and pull of I want to be seen, heard, recognized, valued, compensated because I mean, deep down, like I know that I'm badass. Like I know that I am so many wonderful things. And then there's this like natural inclination to hide, mask, conceal. I have a secretiveness to me that, and I want to be careful with that word. It's not secretive in like a I'm trying to get away with some shit. Well, that can manifest too. Let me not sound perfect, bitch. I'm crazy. And I can try to be all these things, but what I mean when I say secretive, it's just that I had said to somebody earlier, I have a big family, and honestly, and I don't really, care who hears this. they really don't know anything about me. And that's okay. Like it's okay. They know I live in Lancaster. They kind of know I'm in recovery. I just use that as an example because it's just been this like this interesting place to be throughout my life to want to be seen, truly seen authentically as Gina, but also hiding. And I think it plays into some shame, oftentimes in my life, shame for just existing. You know, and this fucked up belief system that everything that I do is yeah, like unworthy or should be hidden away or whatever. But the cool thing is like, and that human design gave me this gift of seeing myself a little bit more, but also loving myself a little bit more. So when we talk about changing this language of healing being grueling, difficult work, I wrote down this morning actually, I wrote down what I wrote down characteristics of ways I want to love myself
Mm.
and what that is and what it looks like and feels like. And I wrote down ways I want to be loved by others. And
Oh.
that doesn't just mean romantically, but that means in my friendships. That means in any energetic exchange, right? Like I have a responsibility to know myself well enough to tell people what I need. And I don't always do a good job of it, but I really do try and I'm trying and I actively work on it. And I really want to tie in the word compassion to this conversation because I can't speak for everybody, but self-compassion and self-nurturing and soothing has been this journey for me that I feel like I've only started to tap into in the last like 6 months. Out of desperation too, which oftentimes the most groundbreaking shit comes from the most painful fucking places. But um, so I guess I just wanna maybe like ask your perspective on how we approach this work with more a sense of self-compassion and nurturing to to ourselves. Like me and Amber have talked about this a lot over the last year of like, about devotion and self-love and what does that even mean? How do you do it? Like how do we tie it into this work?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is, and this is actually why I love human design so much. Not that we need permission, because we inherently deserve love. We are love. We're here to be loved, to experience love, and we hopefully will return to love, right? That's the whole idea of our soul's existence, at least in my purview. But I love human design because when I first looked at my blueprint or chart, whatever you want to call it, I call it a blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
It I was able to just actually see my energetic imprint that gave me automatic permission for being all of these things we're just talking about, Gina.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, wait, there's nothing wrong with you. There's the permission slip. I get to write it every time. And that's what I really love about human design is in those moments where you're feeling internal tension, in those moments where you're like feeling a lot of shame around things or guilt. I really do actually pull my design back out, my human design, and it gives me this sense of seeing in this very linear world, the beauty and the divinity of my energetics that I was gifted, by the universe or whatever you perceive to be the greater thing, the greater power that is out there, and it gives me the ability to just continue to do my play or my work, whichever you choose to call it, in a way that honors myself and my authenticity. And it also gives me permission to love others when I think that they're being shitty. And that's really big because part of the shadow work that we do is in reaction to
Mm-hmm.
other people
Mm-hmm.
that are in our environments. And you touched on this a little bit. And I don't want to say this is exactly what you were saying, but like something happens, somebody says something to me, or something happens in my environment, and now I'm reacting, and that's where the shadow really comes out and wants to play. And that's how it often shows up for me, at least. And now, human design, yes, it gives me a lot of things that I can work on for myself, but it also gives me this permission to try to love that person regardless of how my body, my mind, my is reacting in that moment. And I think that's really important. It doesn't mean I'm going to allow them to continue to do harm to me, right? It doesn't mean I'm giving them permission to hurt me, or that I'm going to stay in relationships or places where I believe that I'm not being honored or respected. And yet it allows me the pause I need to actually process what I believe is the truth of that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then unfold, unravel the work around what's going on. Oh, and I'll say one more thing before, so that I can, with a good, with my true authority, or some people might call this good conscience, continue to hold and nurture relationships and environments and projects, people, places, and things that are actually good for me, and work through those things versus knowing when it's time to walk away and release people, places, things, relationships that are not um,
Mm-hmm.
good for me.
Yes. I love everything that you said, and like I was thinking so many things as you're talking. I should like write them down maybe as we have these conversations, but um and I love what you said about yes, it they often emerge in relationship with other. I mean, it just is for various reasons. A, because the other is my mirror. B, because the other people are they show me parts of myself that either I haven't seen, addressed, know, or understand. They also show me parts of me that I love, right? I think both are true. But ultimately, what it gives me the opportunity, because this is what I know. I want to be better. I think I used to, when I was younger, I wanted everybody to want to be better, if that makes sense. Like I wanted to like carry some kind of like torch of and like shout from the rooftops of like why isn't everybody like on this quest to be a better like be the best human that they can be. And I can't determine whether people are doing that or not doing that, number one. But number two, when I pause in a moment and I recognize when my shadows are emerging, and for me it comes in the form of, I said it earlier. I mean, it's pretty fucking simple. Bitterness, resentment, frustration. What happens when if I react or repress these parts of me is that I either shut down or maybe I run or whatever. And when I say I want to be better, it's that I don't want to like lose relationships as a result of allowing these things to go unaddressed. I want to have the capacity and emotional maturity to have hard conversations and speak my truth and speak my feelings. I talked about journaling last night, and one of the things I wrote about is like what's a pattern that I'm leaving in the past, a pattern in relationships. And again, this isn't just romantic, this is any relationship. And a pattern that I'm leaving behind is not speaking my true thoughts and feelings. And
Mhm.
how I've articulated this at times in my life is it feels like a boot on my chest and on my throat. It feels like a black fucking combat boot is sitting here and here. My work, what I part of my work, I believe, is to release fear of rejection, abandonment, not being loved, accepted, or liked anymore, and to be able to speak freely my truth, no matter if it sounds crazy or whatever, but to just to say the things. And I feel like slowly but surely, like I'm constantly, here's the thing too, I'm constantly given opportunities to do so. It doesn't mean I always fucking take them, but I can recognize them when they come. And sometimes I take them and some other times I don't, and that's okay too. But I guess for me too, like in knock on wood, they've it's kind of dissipated, but for like 2 months I woke up to panic attacks, like two panic attacks. I woke up every morning to an actual panic attack. It
Mm,
sucks, by the way. Um, but how I brought myself out of it was like not even like was like literally holding like my hand to my cheek, um, or like here, and not so much even because I used to just pray for it to go away, like from like like I would just be like, please, 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 please make this stop, make this stop, make this stop. And to me, I think a aspect of shadow work is just even in the act of holding myself or holding my face, it's not so much please go away, it's that like I know you're there. And knowing it's usually an aspect of little Gina that like just wants to be loved or held or whatever. And to have the growth over the years to do it for myself is like, man, just such a gift.
mhm.
It's just such a gift. I think about too, like when I started my journey too, I mean, I started a journey of and this was, getting clean and talk therapy and coming out of some stuff like at 22 years old. And I remember really approaching healing work as like needing to fix or change myself. And what's cool in the last decade or however long is that it isn't actually has nothing to do about fixing any part of me. It's seeing all parts and saying they're all like beautiful, worthy, and like meant and here to be embraced and loved.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what I want to just add on to that, especially before we like would wrap up any kind of conversation about shadow work in particular, is shadow work looks very different depending on who you are,
Mm,
how you view it, how you define it. And that really is trying lots of different things, going out there and seeing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Um, and I love that you talked about like holding your face, putting your hands on your body. When you were talking about self-compassion and self-love, not all of us in the world have had guardians who in our youth gave us safety through physical touch.
mm,
And um, yet by nature, we need physical touch. We need loving, safe, physical touch. I would not call us pack animals, but we are we are animals,
mm,
and we need to be in communion. And so, hugging yourself is so underrated. Just so underrated. Hug
mm,
yourself on the daily. When I was in the midst of my shadow work, one of my good friends and a practitioner that I trust to work on me or with me to support my process said to me after a session, she said, Amber, you're so hard on yourself.
mm,
She said, you're really, really hard on yourself. And I see you like trying to wring yourself out. And Gina, you might have heard me tell this story privately before, but I think it's good here, wringing yourself out and really, it was almost abrasive.
Mm.
Um, the word that I'm getting right now is torturous, almost like this very torturous, like ripping apart of these not what I thought were not lovable parts of myself. And she said, rather than that, rather than drag these shadow pieces out into the light and basically like put them on a pyre and burn them, which is essentially what you're sort of doing, it's hugging them, holding them. And as you mentioned very early on, integrating them into who you are rather than, ostracizing them from yourself. And that is a practice that I still do to this day. When I'm sitting in ritual with myself, is I really just visualize my shadow aspect, like a full embodied version of my shadow aspect, and I hug it. I
Mm.
just I just hug it and allow it to sort of sink back into myself. Um, for me, that's a very important visualization to do, um, because it is integrative, at least for me, um,
Hmm.
rather than the process I used to do, which was very, very, very torturous in nature.
Hmm. Yeah, I love everything that you said, and man, I look back even a few years ago, and the way that I spoke to myself in my head was just so mean, man. Um, and so yeah, just mean. I don't have any other word for it other than mean. And just some closing thoughts around like a really amazing conversation, I think, is like, you know, we covered and cover a lot of ground, like especially, which if you're listening to this, you're on a journey, right? I don't think we stumble upon or listen to this stuff by accident. Like we're seekers, whatever that means to you. And I think that my said sentiment too is it's that we can simplify so greatly. Like, Amber and I work in this space in various spaces as, practitioners. I've worked in as a formal counselor in the past, like and I mentioned this earlier, but I want to reiterate it, is that we overcomplicate the process, man, and even right now, a common word is somatic healing, somatic therapy. I love that. But here's the thing, it's ancient in nature. It's hundreds of thousands of years old. We're just starting to tap into it and kind of Americanizing it, but whatever. I'm not going to get on my soapbox. But what I will say is that while you will find a million videos, workshops, retreats for all the things, all the fancy things, I believe that healing happens in moments, in choices,
Mm.
in breath, and in presence. And when we take the option in a moment, in one fucking moment, to breathe into a space instead of shaming it, calling it names, calling ourselves names, torturing ourselves, like Amber said, we are actively participating in a process of healing.
Yep.
Period.
Yep.
Period. And I don't think that this way of life should be hard, man. I don't think it should be expensive. I don't think I think that it's in moments, and it's awareness, it's in taking other choices in a moment, and like I just feel like that is just I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if I had to simplify it before we round out, if you shadow work in its simplest form is just taking the dial from self-hatred and moving it to self-love.
Hmm.
And that can be a moment by moment basis. Anytime I can go from self-hatred to self-love instead, I'm doing the work. I'm doing the work.
Oh yeah. So I think that that is a beautiful place to end the conversation. Um, my hope every time is that you got something out of this, and thank you, Amber, for like your beautiful thoughts and perspective on all the things. And stay tuned in the description and in the closing for some other options and resources when it comes to, shadow work or doing some work outside of this space. So thanks everybody for listening.